place, I don't think the sun ever shines in Auschwitz. Many people pay for a tour, they ride the 2-hour shuttle, and they change their mind once they get to the gate. Once they see that sign, work will set you free. Nobody is prepared for the type of emotions you feel when you're standing outside that gate. I felt nervous, sad, angry, and all other types of emotions. I wondered if I should actually walk inside the camp, a place where millions of people were murdered for no reason. A lot of people go mostly because they want to see, to feel, to learn, to try to understand what really happened back then, but there is no explanation. Some people also go to pay their respects to people whose lives were ended and forever changed. The first block we walked into was Block 4. This was the extermination building. Our tour guide showed us a map with different gas chambers and different concentration camps. We also saw these pieces of paper which showed us names and reasons on why people were brought to the concentration camp. We then walked into another room called the Road of Death, where we saw real-life photos of people being brought in on a train, women, children, elderly, kids, and they were lined up for the selection. Women, children, elderly, and the handicapped were sent directly to the gas chambers, and they had no idea. In another room, we were shown canisters of pesticides that were used to kill people in the gas chambers. This building, number 5, was the most difficult building to walk into. The material proof of crime. The belongings you see in these clips are from the prisoners at Auschwitz. You see tons of glasses that were taken from them before they were sent into the gas chambers. You see Jewish prayer shawls that were also taken. And one of the most horrifying things I saw were the prosthetic limbs, the braces, the crutches, and anything else for the handicapped. These were taken from the people before they were sent into the gas chambers. The prisoners of these camps were told that they would have a better life soon and to put their name and their address on their suitcases, and they would be returned to them once they were done working at the camp. Two rooms that I thought were the most difficult was the shoe room, where you see 40,000 pairs of shoes. I couldn't help but stare at 1 or 2 shoes at a time and wondered who they belonged to. Another room, which was full of human hair, braids, ponytails, balled up hair, was not allowed to be videotaped. But it was a very,
Cut
very
your hair
difficult
off so they
room
wouldn't
to
smell
visit.
it burning.
The next block we went into was number 7. We saw some of the living conditions of the prisoners in the first few weeks the camp started. They were terrible living conditions, but nothing compared to what you will see later in this video. As we walked through the halls, we saw many photos on the wall of the prisoners who were kept at Auschwitz. You see the uniforms they wear, which look like striped pajamas, and numbers across their chest. At the bottom of the photo, it shows deported and when they passed away. Many people only lived a few months of being in the camp. Block 11 was the next building that we went to. This is the building where prisoners were experimented on and where they were tortured. It was really hard to listen to a lot of the stories that the tour guide told us. There was a few times that I actually had to take out my headphones because I didn't want to hear anymore. Men and women were forced to strip naked in these rooms, leave their clothes in there, and walk out to the death wall where they were shot. They were also starved to death and suffocated in some of those rooms. Right outside block number 7 was a gate. Inside that gate, where you walked all the way towards the back, is where you see the death wall. This is where People were lined up, sometimes in groups, sometimes individual, and were executed.
And it's gonna happen again.
We walked into one of the gas chambers. I couldn't understand why people are allowed to enter, considering millions of people were killed inside. But I remembered the gas chambers weren't the only place people were killed. The word chamber is such an ugly word, which fit this entire room. When you look around, the walls, the ceiling, the floor, everything was ugly. There's actually 3 separate camps to Auschwitz. The first part I showed you was the main camp. There was also Auschwitz-Monowitz, which was a labor camp. In this camp here was Birkenau, the extermination camp. This is where the train came in with prisoners, and a selection took place. The selection was where they picked strong and healthy workers for the camp, and the rest of the people were sent to the gas chambers. They would force close to 100 prisoners in one of those train sections. Here you see the ruins of one of the largest gas chambers in the camp. It was destroyed to try and cover up what really happened here. This right here is where the prisoners lived and where they slept. There was about 8 people that slept and lived on each bunk area. Some people had no choice but to sleep in the walk area on the dirt because there was too many people and not enough room. The place was filled with rats, insects, and diseases. Visiting a place like this and facing the reality of what happened, seeing the proof right in front of your eyes still makes it difficult to grasp. But I still feel that it's important to go see.
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
Has the Trump administration set up concentration camps in Texas for migrants? The answer is yes, according to at least one expert. Andrea Pitzer.
这个逃跑是不可能的。这个每个角落、每个地方都有带枪的警察，这个逃跑是不可能的。我上课的时候，有些带枪的警察进来，就是想带走的人，他们就拉出去了。拉出去以后带到那个黑房子里面，我们就可以听到他们的那个尖叫声。还有那个呼救声这样子的，我们知道他们是受到虐待的。
tam vurib berdi. Her birimizden ısını buludu. Mana bu yerda endi o darsda deyilishcha bu sizlar dindan zaharlandinglar. Bu biz islom dini degan bir yuqumli kasal. Bu chet ellardan eqib kirgan.
So-called document you're talking about is a pure fabrications.
Bullshit.
Don't listen to fake news. Don't listen to fabrications.
The end game is to change an entire minority population. It's a cultural genocide and it's a coercive social reengineering.
Reset.
Stories you talked about was of the Native American being over 10 million at one point, now to less than 1 million.
When the European invader came here in the late 1490s, there were 112 million of us in this Republic of the United States. It's not a country, it's a republic. And in less than 500 years, through genocidal practices, through the introduction of diseases that we had no immunity to, and other evil things that he brought, arrogance, greed. Our numbers went from 112 million to less than 1 million by 1930. How do you kill off 111 million great people, loving people, people that are willing to share whatever they have, regardless of how small it is or how much they got? How do you do that?
That's a genocide you don't hear in the history books.
No.
Absolutely. And another form of genocide that they practiced on us was paper genocide. There was a Dr. Arthur Plecker in Virginia, a cold-blooded racist, through taking a baby, an Indian baby, and instead of putting Indian or tribal name on that birth certificate, he would put mulatto or other. So many people walking around, even today as we speak, 2017, don't know who they are. Because at birth, their identity was destroyed through Dr. Arthur Plecker, the father of eugenics, who became the Director of Vital Statistics during this time for the state of Virginia.
Horrors of Thanksgiving and America as a white future minority. Coming up.
By the early 19th century, the U.S. was rapidly growing, both in size and power. Land-hungry and ambitious, the new country was also drastically changing its policies towards the Indian nations. And nowhere was this more evident than in the treaties.
The United States' primary interest in treaty making was to acquire Indian land. And so the treaties were used for that purpose, especially as the United States found itself in a position to pretty much dictate the terms of the treaty. And so the treaties morphed from this friendship and reciprocity sort of relationship into a very one-sided thing.
There's almost a mythology about this, that somehow when the Pilgrims arrived, they were dragging land behind them. There was no land brought here. The land here was Native nations. And this is what the United States needed. It's what it wanted. They wanted
That's what
all
they
of it.
took.
This is what the United States needed. It's what it wanted. They wanted all of it. They wanted everything.
The greed came in. Well, we have a little tract here now we need a little more. And, well, we need to go make another treaty. We didn't understand that eventually those treaty-making processes ended up to the acquisition of all of our ancestral homeland. That land was a part of us. That land helped us be. That land was who we were and who we are.
The command of removal came unexpectedly upon most of us. There was a time that we noticed several overloaded wagons were passing our home, yet we did not grasp the meaning. Then one day, wagons stopped. We were to be taken away and leave our homes, never to return.
Just like they're going to do when the day comes for you to go to the FEMA camp.
To get what they wanted, U.S. officials brokered treaties through any means available. Their tactics were so corrupt that the once trusted treaties became quickly known as bad paper.
There were people at these treaty negotiations who would do anything to get an agreement on the table. And so there was very routinely bribery, individual payments made to tribal leaders. Alcohol would be used to put people in an agreeable frame of mind, and even coercion to say to people, you must sign this agreement or else.
Every means of trickery and fraud.
You must take the vaccination or else.
Was employed against Native nations. The United States would appoint a false leadership, people who had no right to speak for the tribe, and say, you're the leader of this tribe, sign this paper giving away all your land.
Sound like
As
Trudeau.
the century progressed, the treaties became more and more lopsided, a far cry from the parallel paths of the Goswenta. Despite appeals from the Indian nations, the U.S. kept on its new trajectory, rationalizing its aggressive actions along the way.
They have neither the intelligence, the industry, the moral habits, nor the desire of improvement.
Now listen closely, people, because this is why they built the FEMA camps.
In the United States. And for the international order that we have worked
For all of you who
to build.
resist it.
Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
Got it? In the news today, now they're saying most people are not taking the vaccination, which will only bring about this law right here, making it a mandatory one to save the people, which is they built all of these 800 new awaiting FEMA camps for all of you people who refuse to take it. This is proof they're turning the Walmarts into FEMA camps, detention centers, so you'll have one locally.
I haven't asked to leave the property, but I'm guessing that's about what's to happen.
Yeah, sir, I think that's what they're going towards. What was your name again, sir? I'm sorry,
Senator Jeff Merkley. U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley. I've now been asked to leave the property, and so I'll comply with that.
2 weeks ago, Senator Jeff Merkley tried to get a tour of an immigrant detention center at an abandoned Walmart building in Brownsville, Texas, that houses children. Senator Merkley was not allowed inside. No one would grant him an interview. But today, for the first time since Senator Merkley was asked to leave the premises, our own Jacob Soboroff finally did get a tour. He joins me now just outside that facility in Brownsville, Texas. Jacob, you were with a few other journalists let into that facility. What did you see?
You know, Chris, I have been inside a federal prison before. I've been inside several county jails. This place is called a shelter, but effectively these kids are incarcerated. There are 1,400 of them, over 1,400 of them, that are spending not weeks, months inside this place. They're not actually literally in cages or in cells, but I kid you not, one of the first things an employee of the shelter said to me is, when we walked inside, can you try to smile at these kids? Because it's weird to see people from the outside. They feel like animals locked up in cages being looked at. It was an extraordinary thing to see.
Well, so talk me through what's it look like. I mean, it's a Walmart that's been refashioned. Is it open air rooms with beds? Like,
it is. These kids are free to move around. There are 4 beds. It's basically a dormitory structure. You know, it's not nice by the standards of a place to be incarcerated. You know, it's fresh paint everywhere. There's a cafeteria for kids to go to, about 300 at a time. There are 4 beds per room, or at least they're supposed to be. But right now there are 5. They have a variance in here from the state of Texas since May because of this overcrowding crisis that's been manufactured basically. It's a self-inflicted crisis, as our colleague Julia Ainsley was saying earlier today on MSNBC, because the Trump administration is taking children from their parents and effectively making them unaccompanied minors. This place used to be just for kids that would walk across the border for the most part, virtually 100% on their own. And now you're getting more and more kids, up to 30% as of right now, according to one official inside, that have been separated from their parents over the last couple of months. They have recreation, but they're allowed outside, Chris, where we are in the fresh air, for 2 hours a day. And the rest of 22 hours a day, they're inside a former Walmart.
So, all right.
Texas, which until Monday was home to one of the top 10 busiest Walmart stores in the country, the city building official told me his plumbing inspector was sent away when he offered to help secure permits. While the company claimed to have plumbing problems, a longtime employee of a tax service located in that store said she never saw a plumber or an out-of-order restroom in 3 years.
They sent the building inspector away because they don't want him to know that they're turning it into a prison. yes, they can make it mandatory.